Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Lost Signals Reviews Film and Television. Today we are doing a bold film in honor of Black Lives Matter and the recent events that are occurring. A film entitled Bulworth, which you should know because you clicked on the link to this. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Scott Thurlow.
Insane in the Membrane.
And Christopher Morgan.
Justice for all.
All right, and I'm going to give the log line for this. Bulworth, Nina Turner, 2020.
Very nice.
Who is close in my heart for progressive values nowadays. And so, Scott, would you like to tell us about what the movie Bulworth is all about?
Certainly. So Warren Beatty plays a somewhat jaded senator. So he's been an incumbent for a while, and he just realizes that he's sort of disillusioned with his position in power and in society and in the government in general, and decides to take a hit out on himself, which then allows him to basically speak his actual mind, right? And regardless of politics, just pointing out hypocrisy and like things like the lobbyists and so forth. And so while he does this, his campaign managers are going nuts trying to like figure it out, but it creates popularity for him. He meets Halle Berry, who is actually the assassin in which
Nina,
which was contracted to take him out. Like that's who was hired, and she happens to sort of shelter him, like sort of like become like not lovers, maybe at the very end, but he's able to see the people who are living in this position versus him, and that spurs him on to just speak upon like he has like debates and so forth on like televised. He calls out the media, he calls out again the big money, the corporations involved in all this, and just sort of like calls out all the bullshit in politics, really, which rallies like many people behind him, of those who are like caught in the trappings of it. And it's sort of like you're getting behind him, and then at the end, of course, like I think it makes perfect narrative sense that he gets shot by a white man who I believe is he's the face, or he's the insurance lobbyist.
He is the face of industrialized healthcare system.
Yes, exactly. So like what he's speaking about. So like that's basically the plot, and it we'll speak about it more certainly in themes, but that's generally like what happens in the story, and that's what it's about. And I think it's so. As a quick backstory, quick history, we were going to do this movie a couple weeks from now, but I think again, in light of actual real life events, I think it's a pertinent and relevant one to look at, and just again calling out the hypocrisy of the system. And one senator who's entrenched in it just says enough is enough, and just speaks his mind, tells you how it is, regardless, and also sees how it is for people to live on the other end of it, and that also like spurs him on in a sense, like adds fuel to his fire for him just being like, yo, fuck it, here's how it is, like no more illusionary bullshit, like this is how our society works, and it's set up to fuck everyone over, right? Everyone but the rich. So I think like it's either a 2.5 or even Chris a 2.75, a very strong plot. I'm fine with giving it a 3. I really am. I don't think there's a wasted moment. Never did I think, oh, what? Like, again, it's an hour and 48 minutes, something like that. And I think each scene just gives you a nice roller coaster ride, or a nice ride through it. And we'll get into it, performances and so forth. But the plot, the narrative itself, I think sustained itself really, really well. And I'm looking at rounding it up to a 3. So with that, go ahead, guys.
I'm going to say this now because even though I'll probably touch more on it in themes, is as much as I agree with and I'm on board with Bulworth's politics. One of the things I do love about this movie is, well, first of all, it's a big budget Hollywood movie, and basically there's a very meta aspect, like, basically acknowledging the fact that, in with regard to like a meta statement, It's just like, yeah, we are in the lap of privilege. We spend millions of dollars on this crap, and we make crap. But I also like the fact that he acknowledges his own privilege. And also when they go down and they meet Don Cheadle, he does not give them a pass just because they're in a poor black neighborhood. I mean, he's a drug kingpin and he's using kids as his mules. So what I'm saying is, as many social statements in this that I agree with, I agree with the fact that he doesn't really let anybody slide, including himself. He's part of that industry, and he ripped the shit out of that industry.
Yeah, he flat out admits that. Exactly. Yeah.
So while it's easy to view this prescient film as a soapbox for Warren Beatty, and to a certain extent it is, I think it's easy to talk about the themes because the themes are what he was going for in discussing this. I want to talk about the narrative structure here for a second, because it's a classic narrative structure. A protagonist gains insight, has, at the end, Warren Beatty kind of returns to senatorial stature, but he also has learned from his he unites the two worlds that he was that he found, and he's punished for that. And that's a classic Greek myth narrative, and it's classic narrative in the way. So it's not just, even though I think that perhaps detractors can view this as just a soapbox, it's not.
I think it's beyond
there's a classic narrative to this, and for that reason I'm giving it 3. And we can discuss all the nuances and themes, and that's easy to do because it is like a deconstruction of our political system and the racism and everything like that. But narratively wise, it's a classic tale.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think that's going to convince me to stick with 3, which is my initial assessment anyway. What do you think, Chris?
I agree with Ian on the narrative. I just wanted to point out, narratively speaking, because a lot of times one of the things I grade narrative on is to have a true narrative, there has to be a level of objectivity if somebody is to persuade and convince. Again, I'm going to get more into the theme, but I do believe all around is an extremely successful narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I concur.
So 3. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, Chris, keep talking about themes.
Well, as I said earlier, like the health insurance industry kills. The themes in this, where do I begin? Theme,
they are myriad.
Well, all right, I'm just going to say a blanket theme is the nuances of political corruption. And by politics, I mean politics across the board. I'm not talking just in Washington.
Yep.
I'm talking interpersonal, business. There's an entire macrocosm of various political machinations, levels happening simultaneously. I mean, Sean Astin plays the cameraman, and he doesn't have many lines, but when he's trying to connect with one of Halle Berry's friends, he starts basically trying to find common ground, and he's just like talking about ebonics, which I have. That's a word I hadn't heard in a long time.
Sure.
You've got the driver. There's all these little bits and pieces, like the people that work at the club. It's just like you get such a wonderful, complete picture of every world that Bulworth goes through without having to linger. One of the things I want to say with regard to narrative is it's paced extremely well. Mm-hmm. And thematically, I obviously like the fact that 24 years ago, Warren Beatty and whoever co-wrote the movie with him, and I can't remember, did his research, looked around, realized a lot. And unfortunately, we didn't have as many Bulworths as we need, because these things are still more prescient than they were then. Sure. So as a blanket theme, because there's nuances upon nuances that we get into, I'm just going to say it's the theme is politics, and you can take any slice of that pie you want, and it is applicable here.
No, you go first, and I'll round out.
So there's one line in the movie that, it's humorous on the surface, but I still think it's resonant and relevant. Where Bulworth, again, once he just starts I don't want to say going off the rails when he just sheds his like image and just says it how it is. He goes, listen, black people and white people have more in common with each other than rich people. And I think that's like, it's not like the only theme, of course, but it's a nuance. Like you said, Chris, there are many nuances to the themes of this movie because it has so many tendrils in the political system at large, as you mentioned. So I think that one to me, like, of course, like speaks, like, is more relevant, highlighted, if you will. And yeah, there's so many other like subtle things where it just calls out again hypocrisy, again the lobbyist issue, like you said, Chris, the insurance, the lobbyist, he's the one who actually assassinates Bulworth, or at least shoots him, right? It's sort of left unclear at the end, but even so, right, it highlights all those little elements, like these little like the cogs in the political machine that would be nice to smash. However, Bulworth himself as a character highlights why it's so hard to do that, and I think that is an important point to the themes at large as well. So I'm definitely giving the 1. Good.
I just wanted to say, to build off of something else, was he really tapped into the populist, what a populist candidate is,
Sure.
and the successes and failings of being such. And he mentioned the neoconservatives, but at the time, neoliberalism wasn't recognized because hey, Clinton's in office, we can all placate ourselves.
Sure.
That's the only
Clinton was the codification of neoliberalism in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But quickly, I know you're as much of a fan of Israel politics as I am Israeli politics. But that West Bank line was fantastic. Just one line.
You blink it, you'll fucking miss that, yeah.
But what I want to talk about is sadly to say, the magical Negro character, which is a trope. It exists in this film. I'm not going to give it a pass, but they have a homeless man who constantly reinforces the theme of this. And it's an important theme, even if it's used as a trope.
I was going to wait to speak about that, but yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Don't be a ghost, Bulworth, be a spirit. And that they reinforce that over and over again. And that's and whether it's through black activists who've been killed in the course of justice, but the idea is that the spirit needs to be kept alive, that these ideas
keep the fire stoked. Yeah.
And I really do think it's ultimately not a racial thing, not a gender thing. It's about individuals who give a damn about people in their world, who carry that torch, even if you're going against a system that's more powerful than you, a system that can kill you on a whim and get away with it, which it seems like they did at the end. The important part is keeping the spirit moving forward and reminding people about why you're fighting for what you're fighting for. I think that's one of the more powerful messages that they have there.
I agree. Just want to add a little bit that, on the surface, it almost, not almost, I think it does transcend the racial boundaries because, like I said, as a line that's in the movie itself, it's not about that per se. But for sure, that's an important aspect of it. I think it goes beyond that to say, just look at our system in general, our governmental, as a whole, and see the flaws in it, which are myriad and many, and do what you can, keep pushing forward to reform those, to plug those holes, to make them better for everyone, not just any across all sectors of society. So that's all. Certainly giving it a 1. Good, Chris.
Your point, Ian, and we'll probably come back to this in supporting. Not giving a pass on him including the magical Negros trope, in a weird way, I think it would have been irresponsible not to have that trope in there, because he really does call out all the tropes, no matter his raps. Half the conversations he said, at the time, when I was in the theater watching this, I thought this was awesome, but I also heard gasps. I saw it in a white middle class, theater. All right, well, probably upper class because I saw it in Morris County. But, but what I'm saying is, I think again, I feel like this is a very warts and all, even though the politics of Bulworth in mine are, and I probably say in ours, are in line. I also am not one for I'm one for calling bullshit, even if I agree with you. So I think given the picture he had, and given the fact this place takes place in Los Angeles, and that he does, take politics and news and movies all as various forms of entertainment, I thought that, it would have been irresponsible in a way for him not to include that trope.
Well, I do have you brought this up to me, actually, if you don't mind me stealing your thunder for this. Warren Beatty was nervous about releasing this prior after he created it. So he actually asked Cornel West, who's my personal hero. I absolutely adore Cornel West. I think he's I aspire to his humanity. And I was like, no, this needs to be said. Release it. And Warren Beatty did. But I think that's why, like, I don't want to say give him permission, but it's in the sense that it does transcend
to it, right?
even though it's a white man writing about a white politician becoming more urban. I think it is the politics, whatever flaws you can find in this, the message behind it is far too important to dismiss for, I think, what could be surface level criticisms of it.
Well, especially, I think it was really responsible for Warren Beatty to do that because, as he often points out, Hollywood exists in the bubble. I mean, we see it. There's a reason that they're called the East. There's the trope of the East Coast elites, and that's has to do with the entertainment business as well. So even
it's coastal elites, get your prejudices correct.
What I call, right, the coastal elites.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have views, but as a heterosexual white middle class male, there are things that you're fighting for and you believe in justice wise, but you can never once speak for somebody that you're not. I mean, I can't even speak for you guys. It's I've never been to grad school or it's kind of so. But
certainly you can't.
Right. While Cornel West cannot speak for all Black people, it is important to have somebody who is an activist, who is a man of compassion and intelligence. For Warren Beatty, go to him like, look, this is the message I'm putting out there. How are you receiving this? And are there any things that you could perceive that, given your knowledge, because you can't speak for all Black people, is there anything that we might want to be aware of?
But I think that Warren Beatty can speak for the hypocrisy within his own circle, in his own bubble. And I think that's what the main point of Bulworth is to take the piss out of the coastal liberal class, if you will, and its surface level desire for reforms.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I think themes is one of the strongest ones, if not the strongest, for this film, and I'm giving it a 1 with a bullet for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'm going to talk about the antagonist.
Right.
And Warren Beatty is certainly antagonized throughout this, partly on his own fault, but I believe it is...
He certainly has his faults as a character, but...
it is a man who has sold out enough, and he is being oppressed to the point of suicide by the amount he had to sell out, which, I understand in a certain sense that internal suffering that he was going through. But we also have the insurance executive, it's easy to say oil executive, who is representation of lobbyists on a whole.
Yes, exactly.
And also, I would say his fledglings play a certain role of antagonist because
the sycophantic,
they're against him until they realize that what he's doing is good for the polls.
It's good for the numbers.
So they're all
doing
behind him.
Yeah. I mean, like, it falls into themes, like, right? I mean, it's part of it because those secondary characters sort of exemplify that, like, as an antagonistic force, like, hovering around him, being like, "Oh, sir." At first, they're like, "What are you doing, Senator?" And then like, "Oh shit, it's working, Senator. Keep doing it." He's like, "Listen, I'm not going to keep doing it just because it's giving me good numbers, right? I have some integrity left. Whatever shred of integrity I have left, I'm using it to speak what I think about and what we can do, to speak to all, the people on the ground who aren't privy to the the backroom political system and process." So yeah, I'd agree. Go, Chris.
I was going to say yes, because when Larry King,
so randomly shows up,
and endorses, Bulworth's behavior. And, Larry King speaks,
Yeah, I mean, it's even an indictment on the media, which ties in the themes
Yeah.
as well. But he calls out them for sure. When he has like the big interview, when he shows up and just again does this rap stuff and calls out them, oh, you're being paid. Even the debate, like you guys are all being paid by the same company, and
You're a bunch of rich people interviewing a bunch of rich people.
Yeah.
You're being paid by the same people who are donating to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Don Lemon, I'm looking at you.
Sure. But I'm saying, like, as an antagonist force, like, there's no one thing. I think we might say, like, the ingrained political, social, not economic system as a whole might be it. But he's pointing out, like, of course, the injustices and the flaws in that. And I think that works really well because, and you might be like, oh, Halle Berry as his, like, unbeknownst assassin. But that, like, I don't want to downplay it as, like, a minor plot point. But I think it does take somewhat of a backseat to the more important thematic elements that he's trying to highlight as antagonists to us all as a society.
I can see Warren Beatty as being someone who was harmed greatly by the assassinations of JFK, Martin, MLK, and RFK, which for some reason at that time they liked giving the three acronyms.
Sure.
But I could definitely see him as, and I know a lot of boomers were affected by that, a hopeful presidency and a hopeful would-be president and a great speaker being taken out by, in a sense, the system to a certain extent.
Yeah, of course. So I'm giving it antagonist a 1 for all those like various fronts of forces, if you will, as exemplified in the movie. So. Is that what you're doing as well, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You're nodding.
I agree with it. Yeah. I'm like, I have nothing to add. You guys are talking.
That's fair. Just for people who are listening, Chris is agreeing. Yes.
So, Chris, where were you when JFK died?
I wasn't born yet.
He still wasn't alive. He's not that old, but
I just
good troll. Yeah.
But I also want to go back to themes for 1 second before we go on. As Cornel West says, the love supreme is what we should strive for, and this is about love, both carnal and spiritual.
Yes,
and
it melts them both. Yeah,
and we should love our brothers and sisters. Anyway, Scott, talk about Bulworth and protagonist.
Right, so Jay Bulworth himself, I think, again, it's funny because I didn't know until the credits rolled on the screen. I was like, really? He wrote this and directed it too? Like, I obviously knew he was in it. I've seen this movie before, but it's been a while, and we decided to do it like because of actual current events. But as a character, I think he's a really well-rounded. Like the first 20 minutes, you understand exactly like why he's doing what he's doing. Like it gets you into his world. And you understand again, like why he's disillusioned, as you said, like with the whole system. And basically, he throws up his arms, and says, "Fuck it, I want to have my family, be supported. So if I die, they'll get some good life insurance. So I'm going to take out a weekend research project." I think there's the innuendo, like euphemism he uses to do it. But then, as that means he's freed from the conventions of the political system, he can say whatever he wants with really no fear of repercussions because he doesn't care at that point. And I think that's a very interesting aspect to have as a character, to see that about a third of the way through the movie, and then how that affects him when he actually interacts with Halle Berry's character and her family and like the people, if you will, like the society on that side of the streets or that side of the tracks, as it were, right? And that only sort of reinforces his disillusionment, but then at the same time, in a weird way, it sort of invigorates him to keep going, like to facilitate change. Perhaps he realizes that since I am a senator, a white privileged older senator, I can actually help people out in a way. So I think it's a fascinating character. I think it's really well portrayed, really well written, and well acted, and three-dimensional, in a believable way. So I think I have to give it a lot of credit on that front, and I'm going to give it a 1.
I agree.
Nothing more to add.
Yeah. Sorry, I covered it, but this seems to be the case.
I like Bulworth quite a bit. I was very sad to see him die, even though it was an inevitability. It's almost like a Smoking Aces type ending. Yeah. Who's going to kill him first?
Yeah.
When they do some red herrings and whatnot.
No,
but
I just to build on it real quickly. Like, I think it's interesting. Like, if you hadn't seen it, like, you might question whether or not Halle Berry's character is going to like follow through with her like assassination, like her contract, if you will, on him. And then we see who actually does it. speaks volumes as well unto itself. But
Mhm.
either way, I think his character really well portrayed, really well done. Got to give it a 1.
Oh, absolutely. All right. And Chris, it's on to supporting with you.
Where do we begin? I'm glad we mentioned a lot of these characters because there's been too many to. I do like
A whole bunch.
the homeless man. Is that the Rastafarian? Is that what they called him?
No, that was Rastaman was Don Cheadle, I believe.
Oh, okay, John Cheadle.
Well, also an important supporting character, but
Yeah, I liked. I liked the one man we were talking because he's not only providing that be a spirit, not be a ghost. I do like when the times when he's brought in. He is brought in appropriately.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right about Rastaman.
Okay,
I apologize.
Okay, so I liked how he was used with regard, to the narrative in that he, I don't know if that's part of the trope, but I like his.
it certainly has its tendrils in it. But I think he
in a lot of ways because he would kind of focus Holly Berry's friends. Holly Berry had her own agenda going on, but her friends were the ones who jumped on because they believed, they were excited. This was a message they were excited about. And to me, he kind of reinforced, their position. He kind of put that more into words. Whereas Jack Weston, is that it? His
Oh, you got the list in front of you.
Yeah.
Jack Warden?
Jack Warden. I'm sorry. Yeah. Jack Warden. He in his way, he was kind of like the elder mentor who is also on his side. He seemed pretty comfortable with the directions he was going in. So he was kind of like the old white man who's on his shoulder, who's the progressive and kind of being not as quite of an active North Star, but he was there for him too. I really like the juxtaposition.
I see what you mean. Yeah. No.
But the film just had a plethora of great people. I'll hand off to you guys because I've been stumbling around. And look, by the way, I'm sorry. Just a word of note. I was getting indications from here that something about my internet connection. So I've been trying to put everything on airplane mode, shut everything off. So that's why I don't have everything on recall.
I got you. But no, I'll speak briefly about one. So Oliver Platt, I think, is one of the more prevalent characters given a spotlight. He's his chief campaign manager, I believe, or something like that.
The co-kid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it shows
Stephen Ramosi?
Yeah, it's sure. But I'm saying it shows the aspect of that, right? Where he's almost the quintessential, like, we gotta keep this under control, like, oh shit, Senator Bulworth is going off the rails, we gotta get the campaign back online. But then, as you mentioned in plot, when he sees like, oh, now it's positive for us, now we'll just jump on that, right? He's the quintessential sort of sycophant / capitalize upon whatever popularity is happening. And like, while not, I think he's maybe like a 2.5D character as well. I think he's supposed to exemplify like that kind of person and position within the system. And I think he does a good job of that. Like, you understand why he's doing what he's doing, and like in his motivations, even if you don't necessarily have to agree with them. But that kind of person exists in many politicians' campaigns and staffs. So yeah, I think that was a highlight. Of course, I might leave John Cheadle for you, but I think that aspect as well, like, was really well done. I think all the side characters, I guess Halle Berry, technically counts as a side character. She's not quite a protagonist, but she's the most important side character. And granted, it was an early role for her, but I think she does a great job. And like, you can see the conflict within her once she realizes what's happening and her position, like where she's like sort of stuck into like performing like essentially what
it's pragmatism for survival versus idealism for a better world.
Yes, I like that.
And I think that
well said.
She exemplifies that really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Well said, because I was about to say she's both the angel and devil on his shoulder. But you phrased it a lot better than I just did.
Yeah. I'm definitely giving it a 1. I don't have much more to say.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the kids, the ice cream, and the police.
Sure.
Well, I was about to go into that a little bit because I bring this up occasionally, but I spent some time in the Slammer, and I knew a lot of LDs, which is John Cheadle's character. And it fascinates me by how realistic this portrayal was to a lot of people I met. inside, the fact that he's justifying his pragmatism, but at his heart, he's a good man. And he has to keep up the perception of street tough
Gangsterism, if you will.
versus really caring about his community and caring about the future.
Yep.
And he's just surviving within a system that was set up. And because of proto Bulworth, that type of politician that Bulworth was before he had his revelation, he had nothing to believe in for the system. And I
Totally see that. Yeah.
see that for in this day and age. If you're not black, if you don't vote for a Democrat, in a certain things that are going around nowadays, but like that, LD was one of the more realistic characters, at least in my experience, that I've met.
Sure.
I wish that we'd have a politician like Bulworth nowadays, but we have all these good-hearted people who are stuck in a situation where they can't. They find no way out. There's a friend of mine. I would actually call him a friend of mine. And so it's like he was from Camden, New Jersey. He goes, "I'm 30. I beat the statistics. I survived. I won." And that was the mindset he was going into. And he did.
It's harsh,
but that's so.
He's amplifies that.
Yeah. So I think that it's a very interesting portrayal of. Or a very honest portrayal of certain inner city life, at least from my experience there. But overall, I love how really the motivation at the end of the day for every single supporting character, whether it was the grandma, whether it was the cameraman, it's all about love, man. It's all about
it's got a positive vibe flowing through it. Like, and I agree. Like they're well rounded. Like, granted, I may not personally have the experience that you just said, but I think you can see it. Like it feels resonantly real, if you will. Like, is the best way to describe it. And that's why I think all the side characters, the supporting characters in this film.
But that justification for a pragmatic response to their environment versus, in a sense that I know what I did is wrong, but it's nothing I can do beyond that, was very true to life.
Yeah, I'm doing the best I can with what I have, which was given to me, which wasn't much because of the ingrained prejudices of the system. For sure. Yeah, one for secondary for me.
Absolutely. Okay, Chris. No, sorry, me. Dialogue. And that's, I did not write down the ones for everyone. Cool. Okay. Dialogue, great. It's a lot of soapboxing, but done with a certain style. It's
not
great.
A lot, but there's some to it.
No, there's a ton of deconstruction of the system.
That's certainly true, yes.
But it's done with such style and grace that it doesn't feel like you're ever being preached to. It just feels like him tearing down curtains, pointing to hypocrisy, and being like, yeah, this happens. Now we're moving on to the next scene. Here's another piece of hypocrisy that you need to, and it's great. Whether it's his beat poet rap that he's doing, versus like just the kind of philosophical session, whether it's the panic of his underlings who are trying their best to keep the facade held up. I think that it's very well. It's one of the better written scripts. You told who was it? Who helped him write this?
Don't remember. So Sorkin was like somewhat consultant.
Yes,
he wasn't like credited per se, but like in if you look up IMDb, he's so in the film credits he's not there, but he was like technically brought on to do some punch-ups, I guess.
This is one of the few scripts that I think actually probably benefited from a consensus of really tightening this up to being a phenomenal script.
No, I agree. It's snappy and like it's witty and without like being overbearing, without being too like, oh, we're so clever, right? Like again, it's real enough to an extent, but it's exaggerated, like I don't know, like surreal enough, if that makes sense, that it all flows together, even if like you're like nobody would say this, like nobody's that clever in real life, but nevertheless what is being said is relevant and you know pertinent to the themes and so forth, what we just said. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a lot of credit for sure. There's some funny moments, of course.
I don't think that they ever portrayed Bulworth as being clever, just because they tread the line of almost the Don Quixote type character.
Sure.
Of losing his mind but speaking truth.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to say it. Yeah. So I'm saying overall, just broadly, I think the dialogue works quite a bit. It works well. The script is very tight, and yeah, every exchange from every character, either to each other or from Bulworth to whoever, I think works. And again, it is in service to the overall greater message and or narrative of the film. So I'm giving it a pretty damn solid one. So with all that, sorry, I'll stop talking. Chris, what do you think?
I'm thinking, I wonder if there was some point in the last year that Warren Beatty was listening to Joe Biden and going, "Hey, I wrote that line."
Yeah.
It's just like shit.
I wish Biden would give one line
Would
that
do a Bulworth
Bulworth
style
did.
thing. Yeah.
Listen. I will get behind. I really would love it if he came out and just started.
Started dispensing all the bullshit, if you will. Yeah.
Given his interview with Charlemagne the God, I'm really loath. I'm going to stop right then and there, but I'm going to give it one. The dialogue was really sharp. It was funny where it needed to be. It was serious where it needed to be.
Yep. Exactly.
Mhm.
And it was just
Damn.
Yeah. Yep.
so. Yeah, one.
I agree. Pretty spot on.
And also making him a cop apologize to that little kid was well worth a
Yeah.
watch
We should certainly
for that
highlight
piece of
yeah.
dialogue in general.
It's like apologize to him. Okay, say thank. I don't know what he told the
Just
kid.
say you're
Say
sorry.
thank you.
Say thank you. Go fuck your mother. Good enough. Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yep.
Okay, Scott, talk about the style of Bulworth.
So I think it still holds up. I'm giving it a 1. It may be like, in connotation, like quote unquote the weakest part, but I don't think it's bad. I think it's sort of like it's not the focal point of this film. But that's not to say that the shots weren't great. Like for example, the debate, like when he's on stage debating and all that. Like there's some really good when they cut out the cameras and he's just there like in silhouette rapping, like doing like rap moves. Like that was really cool. And just in general. So like while not maybe like the flashiest stuff ever, like not Tarantino, like not like Wes Anderson shit like that. It's not. It is what it needs to be without being distracting. I think that's the credit for this film. It's may not, again, everything we said is more important, is more the focal point, but visually, in terms of cinematography, it totally works, and all the shots are perfectly fine, and the soundtrack is pretty great too. So I really have no other complaints about that. No other. What do you think, Chris?
To your point on style, I think the reason there is a bit of a disconnect is because this is the quintessential 90s.
Sure.
I mean, seriously, the only
I feel you.
film that you cannot transfer currently is the technology of the time. I mean, it is like the shots where they're in the dark and he's in the studio and he's doing Philip Sousa in the shadows, conducting it. And, it's just like the shots were quintessential 90s, like the set.
No, I agree.
Technology. I mean, to your point, like the style, there's nothing wrong with it, but stylistically, it is the only thing in this film that is a snapshot. Really.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
especially when they try to capture LA like African American communities, the rap styles of that time and all that's very much of that era.
Sure.
But you know what? Whatever. I still like Insane the Membrane.
Yeah, I mean,
those,
they're using the songs that were like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I really, all I'm saying is like, if I'm going to point out a weaker part or nitpick about this film, it might be style, but there's nothing wrong with it at all. It just takes a back seat to me as a critic to the other elements that are more relevant, that are more important, that this film is trying to put forth, in front of the style.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, I agree.
Not from any of that. So,
No.
but,
All right.
what were we gonna say, Ian?
I was going to wrap up, so just please.
Fun fact: when he was dressed in street clothes, the Adidas jacket / hoodie,
Mhm.
Rich gave me his last year. I have that jacket.
Yeah, nice. Well, hello.
Why
fellow-
aren't you wearing that right now?
Hello, fellow teens, of course, etc.
90
Yeah.
degrees. Well, not 90, but it's because it's summertime. I'll wear it as soon as the weather gets cold.
Yeah, I mean that worked too. Yeah, you're right. Like the nice little cap off there.
Watching that, I'm like,
Style.
oh, I have that jacket now. Thanks, Rich.
Mhm.
So you too can be Bulworth in your community.
Yep.
No.
Well, I think you in politics would be great.
You can dress as anyways, but go ahead.
Chris, so finish up with recommendation.
I don't know how it was all I can do because I knew we were recording tonight. It was all I could do not to go on social media for whatever good it is and tell everybody to go watch this film right this second. It was one of those things where I am going to promote the shit out of this when we release on Monday. I do try to. Since I've been unemployed, I'm on social media erratically, but yeah, this movie got me really excited, really angry, and I really wanted everybody I knew and whether or not they've seen it before to rewatch it now. So yeah, I'm fucking gonna recommend this.
So I'm a huge Bernie Sanders supporter, and when they said Bulworth Krat at the end, my heart broke a little bit because I'm a Bernie Krat through and through. And he kept the spirit alive, and I love who came out of his movement, whether it's AOC or Nina Turner or Jemiah Paul or the people who were inspired to carry on his spirit. And I think that Warren Beatty did his damnedest to carry on that spirit with this work, and I think it's important because of that. And I hope that in the long run I can inspire people to carry that torch forward. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I'm definitely giving a 1. It's funny because not funny, but we essentially were going to review this like we've moved it up again in light of actual current events. And yeah, I think it's still resonant. I think it still is damn worthy of a watch and has a lot of things to say, which maybe unfortunately are still relevant like 20 years on, but that doesn't mean they're not, that we shouldn't be talking about them. And this movie highlights, discrepancies in our fucking society. And therefore, I think it is certainly deserving of a 1 in the recommendation front. So I'm
actually going to go farther than that. And I compared this to Do the Right Thing in the power that it had. And if we do an AFI list again, I might attempt to make a push for this because of how much it, sadly, I wish it wasn't relevant nowadays.
It'd be nice if it wasn't
the fact that it has encapsulated 30 years of what I view as the failures of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party by an extension of that, I think it's such an important message.
I absolutely agree. And
anyway, don't be a ghost. Carry on the spirit. I'm Jonathan Niemanzer here with.
Does that mean we give it a 10 overall?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, we gave it a 10. Perfect score.
And I think it is worthy of a 10.
Yeah, Scott
Keep yourself alive.
And Christopher Morgan.
Live long and prosper, peace and long life, and I mean that sincerely.
And stay safe, y'all.
Yep. We'll see you next time. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or Mott's?